Now we will welcome our next speaker, Professor Kerstin Tham. Kerstin is a professor in occupational therapy. She had her PhD studies here at KI, and you are now also head of the department of NVS. And I guess 2009 was a very important year to you as you both became a professor and head of the department. Please, Kerstin.
Thank you very much. I know that there are some errors in my presentation because I had peace and this is not. We will see what will happen. You can see there are notes there. That shouldn't be there, but I like music, so that's okay for me. My name is Kerstin Tham, and I'm, as Karin said, a professor in occupational therapy, and since I've now been the head of the department for 2 years. And in our department, we have a lot of education, teaching, and we have, for example, we are hosts for the occupational therapy program and physiotherapy program, and also nursing program. We have had some challenges during the last years with a nursing program. So I will tell something about that. And I would like to tell you about my inspiration. And the content of my presentation will be that I will tell you my story from student to professor and head of department, and the chapters of importance in this story. And then I will say something more about my sources of inspiration during my working life, and also something about future opportunities, and that is directed to you. So, the first chapter was about OT training. I got my OT education very long time ago at Edsviksskolan. It's close to Danderyds Hospital, but since 1998 this education is now in KI. I wanted to become an occupational therapist because I thought it was a nice combination of art and medicine, occupational therapy. And I also thought that occupational therapists, they really had an independent role within the healthcare system. And freedom and independence has always been something that has been important to me. And during my education, it was very inspiring. I had a very strong interest in knowing more about human brain. So, in the next chapter, when I have ended my education to become an occupational therapist, I made the choice to work within the area of neurology. So I got a position at the Department of Neurology at the Karolinska University Hospital, and that was a very nice and interesting period of my working life. During this time, there was a paradigm shift within occupational therapy. It was during the 80s and 90s internationally. We developed an academic subject and discipline internationally, and we developed occupational science. And occupational science are focusing on the meaning of occupation, everyday occupation, in relation to health. So it has been a very interesting and inspiring journey to really follow this academic development and development on theory and models within this area internationally. So when I, in the beginning of the 90s, were asked to start up with research, I said, yes, 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 I would like to go into research. It was very interesting to me, because also this research project focused on the area of unilateral neglect after stroke. Unilateral neglect is a quite common symptom after stroke in right hemisphere of the brain. So, and that has been a challenge to me, that to really understand what is unilateral neglect. These patients seems to be living in a half world. Left half of the world did not exist to them. So I was very happy to be a part of this research project led by Richard Tegnér, who is a neurologist and who did this very exciting research. But as an occupational therapist, I was, at that time we couldn't be doctoral students in the field of occupational therapy. I had to be a registered doctoral student in neurology, but my focus was on the consequences of brain injuries in daily activities. So instead of focusing on brain function, we learned more about difficulties in the performance of activities with purpose and meaning to the person. So that was my perspective. So I really had to keep on that perspective in this research. So the next chapter, chapter 3, was about my doctoral project and doctoral training. And that was, I think, the most important chapter, I think. I learned so much, and I really got into the scientific world, and I can really recommend you to go into this world. And also the book, you are working with your project and you are writing a book. Your dissertation, doctoral dissertation, is the most important book for you, I think, during your life. And the title of my book was Unilateral Neglect, Aspects of Rehabilitation from an Occupational Therapy Perspective. And it was very inspiring for me to better understand how it was to live in a half world and what we can do to support discovery of disability and adaptation in everyday life among persons with unilateral neglect, and to enter their life worlds. And this phenomenon is very hard to understand, really, because it's not possible, I think, to understand the experiences from living in a half world. Can you try to understand how it is to live in a half world? Is it possible to understand these experiences? It's not really possible, I think. I've really tried hard. It's possible to understand how it is to not see, if you're not able to see things on the left side. But it's not easy to understand how it is when left half of the world, your half of the body or the space, is not existing anymore. So I was a little bit surprised during my training that no one had asked the patients about this, their experiences. There were publications from 100 years back in this topic, but no one had asked them. So that was my most important study in my dissertation, I think, when I asked and followed the lived experiences of patients living in a half world and how they come to discover this, that they lived in a half world. And that was very, very interesting to really understand that to them, the world was complete. For us as human beings, the world is complete. Our life world is complete to us. So they lived in a half world. They couldn't interact with people or things or the interiors on the left side. And they were not aware of the left body of the body half. But for them, they had a complete and whole life world. So that was important. So after finishing this dissertation, I needed to broaden up my area. Unilateral neglect is a quite small research area. So the chapter 4 is about the years after PhD. And you know, stroke is very common. It's 30,000 new cases per year in Sweden. And so it's a very important, it's a lot of costs related to stroke. So this is a very important research area, and it was quite easy for me to get research grants. So I have, during these years, been the supervisor of several PhD students, and that is also one of the most fantastic experiences I have had. To work together with young students and to follow their development in the area that you're really interested in research is fantastic. So the last years I have had some PhD students in my own area of research that have defended their theses and in the area of rehabilitation after stroke. And they are now quite independent and are starting up, they are doing their postdocs. And I think that to follow these processes is the most, I'm so grateful for having had this opportunity to do this, to follow this development during the years. And I also so I can really recommend being a supervisor. And this is like your family. I have an extended family now. Like in Africa, you have an extended family. And this is my extended family, I think. And as you know, you have a conflict of interest for the rest of your life with your doctor student. So that is also true, I think. So I think that my doctor students have been really taken part of the development of new models and methods for rehabilitation after stroke. And there are now, in the new national guidelines for care and rehabilitation after stroke, there are evidence for ADL training in home environment after stroke. And we have contributed to this knowledge development, and we will go on with that. So the next chapter is right now. It's my ongoing research. During the last, I think, 5 years now, we have building up an interdisciplinary research group together with Lena von Koch. And we are running now a major research project, Life After Stroke. And for example, we are exploring the needs of rehabilitation after stroke. And now we are evaluating the effect of client-centered ADL intervention, which is a multi-center cluster randomized controlled trial. And that is the most complicated design, I think, in research. It's very challenging, but we have done more than half of the data collection now.